Good day and welcome to Freight Minds. I'm your host, Tony Cash, and today we will be discussing fraud in the logistics and transportation industry. We have special guest Danielle Spinelli here with us. Hey, Danielle.
Hey.
She is known in the industry as the fraud girl. She brings over a decade of experience in logistics and transportation with deep expertise in the carrier sales and vetting. Having worked as carrier sales broker for 8 years, she's developed a strong understanding of the supply chain and transportation landscape. She's built trusted relationships with carriers, specializing in vetting and compliance. For the past 2 years, Danielle's been a key member of the team at My Carrier Portal, where she educates customers on how they properly review carriers to ensure compliance standards are met and protect brokers and shippers from fraud. Outside of that, she has worked in the industry, and she is the host of Tell Me Everything podcast. Is that correct?
Yep.
And Fraud Girl Fridays, where she shares insights, stories, and strategies to help the logistics community. So, I'm going to start with Fraud Girl, if that's all right.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Funny story. So basically I kept hearing, so I've been with My Care Portal for about 2 years, and kind of right when I got in it, one of my good coworkers was like pushing me out there, like, go talk about fraud. You did this for 8 years and you were on the front lines. Go talk about it. And so pushed me in, and then I kept doing a bunch of different speaking events and podcasts and webinars, and eventually people kept calling me the fraud girl. And I was on another podcast with Nate Johnson, and he was like, we were talking about it. I'm like, yeah, it's so funny. People keep calling me the fraud girl. Like, it's just, I don't know where this came from. And he's like, oh my God, you need a shirt that says that. And so then the next conference I saw him at, he comes with like a hat, hands me it. It has like FG on it. And I'm like, what does FG mean? Then he hands me the shirt, and it's like this superhero fraud girl thing.
That's awesome.
I'm like, oh my God, this is so cool. So I totally leaned into it. And that's kind of what Fraud Girl on my podcast, came into. So
That's awesome.
yeah, that's fun.
Well, what have you learned about fraud? Obviously, you've been doing it 10 years and now specializing with My Carrier Portal and vetting. What have you learned about it?
Honestly, it's evolving every day, so there's never enough to learn. It's funny because having the Fraud Girl Fridays, I was like, I feel like this is gonna be a limited series. Like, there's only so much you can talk about. But as I've been like digging even deeper than what I was doing prior, I'm learning a lot more, like the cybersecurity, the BOL manipulation, cluster that. Like, there's just so many different aspects of it. And because it keeps, the fraudster keeps getting better at this or that, or they'll find a loophole here, or they'll find a weakness in the spot here. And I think the biggest thing is it's a ever, you need to always have your education up on it, and It's an ever, endeavor, I guess, on learning more. So I'm never not learning things about fraud type thing.
No, I can understand that. And obviously, I've been doing this almost 19 years, and I know fraud's changed over the years, but I'm not as in tune to it. So I'm kind of curious, what different fraud schemes are you seeing out there right now?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So and you're right. Like I was a broker for 8 years. So in the beginning it was like double brokering, but the whenever it was double brokered, at least made it to delivery. Like they would skim off the top, and obviously that's terrible, all that stuff. And, but at the end of the day, it made it to delivery. So it wasn't that bad. Now it's where, a double broker situation will happen and the load goes who knows where. Even the people that did the double brokering, sometimes they don't even know because it was triple brokered. So there's a lot of the actual theft that's happening. And so there's the, straight theft where, kind of the same thing that we've always had, where someone's getting, their trailer stolen at a truck stop or whatever. And then there's the, strategic theft where it's more of like deception, and they're posing as a good carrier, or they're posing as, a new identity and trying to build up a good reputation before they just, take people to the cleaners. So there's a bunch of different ways that they're infiltrating. The biggest thing I think that, everybody really needs to know and double check is really understanding who you're dealing with. And a lot of the times that I'm learning, it just takes a couple extra seconds, like a phone call to the FMCSA phone number saying like, hey, did you get my rate sheet? At least knowing who you're working with.
Right.
Like, maybe the guy's a bad guy, and like at least like, hey, 100% this is a bad guy. And as far as making like a insurance claim, you have a little bit more ground on saying that you actually know it's them. But really where a lot of people are getting hit is they just trust like a simple email. They don't take that extra second to do a little bit extra investigating, especially with a new carrier.
Right.
And so I think right now, because it is such a, broker market, and it has been really since 2020, for sure 2021, a lot of us, brokers, shippers, we've made it where it's just, post load and cover and not doing anything extra because it is so easy. And we're not in the whole like relationship section of, logistics. So I think really getting backpedaling to that. And then also making sure that your processes you stick with every time and not deviating just because it's, 4:59 on a Friday and you want to go to the football game or whatever. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, what's one of the craziest fraud stories you've heard?
I will say the one that I'm still like pondering how do we fix is the cluster theft / BOL manipulation.
Okay.
So it was I've heard it from multiple different people, but basically what happens is it'll be like a trusted carrier you work with all day, every day. Like some people have worked with them for years. One of the guys actually went to dinner with this carrier, like knows the guy. And I guess that guy just decided he was, done. Maybe he met somebody at a truck stop. They gave him all the intel. I don't really know how it happened, but basically goes and picks up loads. He knows the shipper and the receiver well enough to know like what exactly do they check on the BOL? Are they doing EBOLs? How often are they doing inventory? Are they really checking every little bit? Are they confirming, the paperwork with the shipper each time? Little things like that. They really know the lane. And mid transit they'll have the back of the doors like not have like the bolts on the outside.
Yeah.
They're not breaking the seal, or if they are, they're changing the paperwork so that's a new seal number or whatever. But they're basically changing the BOLs to show, let's say like it's a count of 55 quantity. They'll change it to like 5. They take 50 off. They go to the receiver. They turn in, at the receiver. They're like, hey, here's your BOL with 5. They're like, oh yeah, 5, cool. No shortages, overages, you're good to go. They turn that same paperwork to the broker. They get paid on the lane. Yep. And then maybe that receiver's a lot of times like one of them was Best Buy was like, I think it was over 6 months. They didn't do inventory. It was $15 million worth of TVs that they found out all these things were missing. And so it's kind of like at that point too, it gets into like a who's exactly is responsible. And then by the time you reach out to the carrier, you're like, hey, did you have shortages? Do you notice something happening? Like, why is, your bills look fine. And I know you, like, especially that one guy, hey, I went to dinner with you. Yeah. And at that point they have the heads up where they're like, oh, time to run. So that carrier, for instance, that, the guy had dinner with, eventually they finally got him on the phone. He's like, yeah, I'm in, blah, blah country, living my best life. Like, I'm done. Thanks for making me make all this money, and, dipped out. So that's probably the craziest story, and the one that is, I think, the scariest, because it is where you don't know who it could be. Like, right. Usually the carriers look squeaky clean. And so it's like, who do you trust nowadays? It's kind of scary. Yeah.
Well, I'm kind of shook by that story.
I know. It'll keep you up at night.
Yeah, especially if you're getting the BOLs when they depart, you hopefully match them up at the end, right? That would be the goal.
EBOLs would be the key. And I know a couple of different, brokers out there that are even like offering that as an option to their shippers. Like, hey, we'll supply the EBOL and we'll handle this. We'll do this for you, at like a surcharge for their cost or something. Or if you don't do it, this is the updated shipper agreement that we need. It's basically saying that you're taking some responsibility, especially with the inventory checks. Like, right. If you're not doing your inventory, and you're hitting me with this enormous claim. Like one of the BOL and cluster thefts that happened was Kraft mac and cheese. And that's not like a valuable load, no. And it's like $10,000 a load. It added up to be almost about $150,000 because it was X amount of loads that happened. But because they're like slinging, just throwing things in at these grocery stores, they weren't checking things and inventory wasn't done for so long. So I think the key is educating shippers on it, EBOLs, and making sure as a broker you have in your language with your shippers that you're at least protected in some way, making it where the shipper has some responsibility.
Okay. You keep saying EBOLs. I've never heard of that.
Electronic.
Well, I kind of figured that. So what does that look like?
So there's some companies out there that provide it, but it's basically just a almost like having it like on a tablet where it would go from A to B. Honestly, like most people, like especially brokers, a lot of times they make the BOL, and then so a lot of times that is EBOL because you can actually see like, hey, that I made the BOL and it's this, and then I'm getting the one that's printed back and it's not the same.
Right.
That even would do. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like a full service, but the ones where the shippers are printing it and then they're just handing a piece of paper out and they're not verifying anything with the receiver, that's when really they find out that they're like that and then they infiltrate.
Okay. Wow. So, also VIN numbers, because we do that. We verify VINs. How can we protect ourselves when we're trying to verify the VIN and making sure that that truck is actually on the load that's going to be doing it?
Yeah, good point. So, and not to like plug my company, but My Care Portal, we have like a VIN verification thing where you send a text to a driver. They get a thing basically saying, take a picture of your truck showing your VIN number. Has to be a live photo. They take that picture, and then we verify the VIN and then grab their location. So, whether or not you use us or use whatever tool, or even if you're relying on text, I think the biggest thing is if you are just texting a driver, having that come in, you need to know that it's a live photo and not just one on Google, because they're sharing those things everywhere. So that's, one thing. And there are ways to do that with the photo to see like when it was taken, where it was taken, stuff like that. It's kind of way beyond my technical capabilities to even explain, but that is possible. So I think even whenever you're getting a picture, almost having like that, I know some people say like, hey, put up 2 fingers or 3 fingers while you're taking the picture to know it's like a oddball case. So that can work. And then really at the end of the day, what I like is whenever I don't trust cab cards. I don't trust insurance cards. Like you have to show me your actual truck because I need to know you're standing there. And then kind of seeing like, hey, this is a red truck. And I can tell my shipper, hey, it should be a red truck saying this on the side. This is the VIN number. If they want to check all those things, at the end of the day, please, for the love of God, make sure the color is the same. Most of the time they're white, and it's not very helpful. But sometimes, that can help. So I think that piece of it, and then, like I said, in your shipper agreement, kind of having that agreement with them saying, if we do this and we provide you with this, we need you to check this. Otherwise, part of the responsibility is off of us on that front. Yeah. And then once you get the VIN, verifying, insurance coverage is the biggest thing, really.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I guess, how surprised will we be at how big the fraud is in the transportation logistics industry? Because that's what I'm learning. I didn't realize it was as big, and then hearing these schemes, the cluster, you call it the cluster
theft, yep.
Didn't hear of that till today. And so how big is it? And would we be surprised?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like I think they said like $500 million, loss basically we're hitting each year. I mean, and not to like freak everybody out, it really is 1% or so, somewhere around there, of all logistics transactions. Okay. So that seems small, but the numbers are pretty big as far as like the losses, and that's just reported. So there's a lot of companies that just eat the cost, and they don't want their reputation ruined, or they don't want to say that this is happening or that's happening. I think we've gotten better as an industry about talking about it, and that's where, like, I think numbers will go up, but I think fraud prevention has helped too. So we'll see the balance. But no, what I think it's definitely shocking how many people this is affecting. I don't think, like I was talking to somebody the other day, and there's nobody that I know that has ever had like foolproof whatever. And even if you do today, if you're not keeping up to date and you're not educating yourself, you're like bound for something in the future. So I think that's the biggest thing, is knowing like, no matter what you're hauling, if you're hauling, paper or water bottles, I've seen that be stolen. I mean, it can be literally anything, is knowing how to properly vet. And that's, if you don't have like a tenured rep that knows how to do all these type of things, you need to have a process in place where because in logistics, we work in the gray area. It's not black and white. And there's so many different things that happen. So it's like, if I have this gray area instance, what do I do with that? And that's really what you need to, as a logistics company, teach your reps on. If this is the gray area, this is our steps, right? Like, we're going to vet this. We're going to make a phone call. We're going to do a VIN verification. We're checking, we're talking to the shipper. We're doing whatever steps we put in place to do that extra check mark, especially with high value or high risk loads.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I can talk about this forever.
No, it's just, to me, fraud back in the day when I got into it was ComCheck fraud, where, they'd steal the money and whatnot. Now learning, again, it's still blowing my mind.
Yeah.
How much money do you think you've been able to help people save by the steps and educating them?
That's a great question. I've never thought about that. I wish I knew. I think a lot of times because it is still a gray area, even when you're vetting, maybe it saved so many people. Maybe it was, the guy wasn't actually a bad guy. Who knows? But I do know some customers that I've helped where if they really stick with the process, they were hitting like maybe one load one load a year, either double brokering or a theft situation, to 0. So if you're really staying super strict in your process every single time, and almost like putting the fear of God in your
Right.
employees, and not only that, but educating each part of the business, because maybe it's not the carrier reps that are getting scammed, but it's the accounting team, or even like your customer reps that are dealing with shippers. Like now there's fake shippers out there that are doing all this other stuff that's happening. And so it's your whole company being educated on what is out there. And that's kind of the biggest step, is having a process in place, keeping everybody educated. And then I do know plenty of customers where they stay up to date, they do all these things, and they've avoided it completely since they switched to that, mindset.
Awesome. You say fake shippers now?
Fake shippers. It's insane.
Are they shipping anything, or are they
yeah, what they'll do is sometimes they'll either act like a real shipper and they'll have like their own version of the website, or I've even heard of them like routing the phone number over, but typically it's like a complete fake entity. And so whenever like logistics companies have that contact us page, shippers are not reaching out to you begging for your work. I
Right.
mean, it's very rare that would ever happen. I would say never. But most of the time that's how they're coming in, is they're doing the contact us. It's like a rep that's like, oh my God, I'm finally get freight. They grab the freight. They're not really doing all the checks and balances, maybe the little bit. But at that point, what happens is they'll give them a load. They post the load. That scamster knows that it's, their load. They pose as a carrier. Oh. They say that they're picking up the load. They'll give like a fake BOL. They'll do all the things. Oh, it delivered, whatever. And then they invoice the broker for that freight. And then, obviously they don't get paid from a shipper because it's not a real shipper. So they're just like printing checks basically to the scamster. And it is a very crazy scheme, and it's pretty rare, but it is something as well with on the customer side. You still got to vet your customers, especially if it is inbound. Like if it's inbound, it's, I don't know. To me, it's scam, but that's me.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, you're right. They're not reaching out to us right now asking.
Not.
They can almost pick what color truck they want.
Oh yeah,
which is tough.
Yeah.
Does your family lean on you for fraud and quiz you and go to you for advice?
I have definitely taught my family a lot about it, especially cybersecurity, and learning like, even like my grandparents, they get phone calls about this, and like, or they'll get an email that says, oh, click here and log into your bank because your bank's been compromised. And it's like, no, go to the website. Don't look at that. Or if you see that email, you'll notice the one letter is off. So family-wise, I've kind of educated them on the cybersecurity piece, because that does affect our daily lives, because there's a lot more fraud than just logistics. It's everywhere. So I guess that's how I've helped them.
It's a huge industry for sure.
Yeah.
And you said something earlier that caught my attention. Some people don't report when they've been a part of fraud.
Right.
Why would they not do that?
Mainly reputation. I think also a little bit of pride, where it's like, I got hit and I don't want people to know I got hit. And trying to get new business, but then hearing maybe like they're scared that like a shipper would find out that they've been hit and that they're like a problem or something. Okay. So I think that's why I do think we've came a long ways, because so many people have been affected. And CargoNet does a great job at, like, you can pretty much submit almost anonymously. Like, they'll at least hide your information.
Right.
So they make it where like it's more encouraging to share the story. And then like myself, I get people messaging me on LinkedIn like, hey, I'll tell you my whole story, but don't tell anybody it was me. I'm like, okay, because I want to learn from whatever happened, because there are so many. I'm not on the ground level anymore. Like, I'm not in the trenches, so I need to hear it from what other people are experiencing, so that I can keep learning and teaching and all that stuff.
And one thing I've learned is it's also hard when there is theft and whatnot, who to go to report the theft.
Oh, yeah.
Because I hear, like, if you call, they'll say, no, you got to call where it happened. They're like, no, you got to call where you're from.
Yeah.
What is that like?
That is a nightmare. So I've actually worked with the California Highway Patrol. The California Highway Patrol has a cargo theft task force. It's 4 guys that handle all of Southern California. Okay. And Southern California is like 75% of all thefts. So they got a huge job in front of them. I'm actually bringing one of them to the Broker Carrier Summit in October to speak. But anyways, I say all that because that was the same question I asked them. I'm like, okay, why is it like I make a phone call and they're like, well, where is he tracking at? And you're like, well, he's tracking here. Well, you need to call them. Well, I can't every single time he tracks call a different department. Like, are you kidding? I would be chasing my tail. So they were like, it's education and it's teaching, officer, like having those departments have not always their own department. Like some states have their own cargo theft task force, especially those like high. I know like Georgia used to have one. I don't think they do anymore. But Florida, Chicago or Illinois, and I think New Jersey are like the other ones. But it's basically like they don't know how to handle that, and so they're so like And so whenever you are making a phone call, you almost need to understand how to make your report. One thing that's huge that I think a lot of people mess up on is when you're making the report, you're saying like, I think there's a theft. You don't say, when they hear I think, they're like, oh, well, they don't even know. I'm not even going to pursue this. But if you're like, hey, this is definitely a theft. This is what happened. This is where they were. I think that they're here. This is what I need help on. Like almost giving them direct information instead of nothing needs to be wishy-washy. Even if you're not 100% sure, you need to sound like you're 100% sure, because that's the only time that they're going to chase it. And honestly, like the officers, they like having those type of chases, if they find a big truck full of all this stuff, like that's a big headline news for them, but they're not going to go after, they get so many calls all day long. So they're not going to go after somebody that's like, I think this is what happened, but I don't know. So that's probably my biggest advice if you're making a report, to be very direct and, try to give as much information without sounding wishy-washy.
Okay. And then I was also told that the FMCSA does not require carriers to have cargo insurance.
Right. They do not, which is wild. They only, and even for auto liability, it's only $750,000, which is nothing. That's like 2 days in the hospital if something happens. So yeah, they do not. And, so with that, I think the industry has made a big impact on making sure that that's something that's mandatory. But because it's not mandatory through the FMCSA, if they drop their cargo insurance, it depends on the insurance. It's dependent on the insurance company to report that cancellation happened. Okay. And so that, as any type of insurance monitoring system, like we're one of them, that is like our biggest challenge, is how do you know the insurance agent's actually going to do what they're supposed to be doing? Because they're legally supposed to be telling all the certificate holders, but do they? Not always. So that's definitely a big challenge. And I think with FMCSA, that's something that legislatively we need to try to push as an industry.
All right. And then is it pretty easy to open up a MC? I hear some carriers are buying 10 MC numbers at a time, just able to rotate.
So the FMCSA made some changes where if you are a new carrier, you have to do facial recognition, and it's like a live photo, just like you would with like getting TSA PreCheck. They use the same, or I think it's Clear actually. They use the same company. Okay. So starting a new MC this past year has been a lot harder. And so that's really why they're finding these carriers that may post on Facebook, like, oh, I want to shut everything down, and then they buy up a good MC and they'll pay extra to get their cell phone and get their email, and like, hey, don't report anything. I'll report it for you, or whatever they say. Which to me, I think the carrier is just as compliant as the bad guy, but that's a whole nother topic. But so I think as a new carrier, like them opening up a new MC, I think that's gotten a lot harder. Okay. So they're really buying up good MCs that are there. FMCSA is trying to make a difference in, making that, at least, the bad guys could still start up a new MC, but at least you would know, like, this is the entity that started it. And it's a little bit easier to kind of go after them than it would be how it was before, which was just like anybody could do anything from anywhere.
Just open it up.
Go to town.
So what are some ways we can improve without creating more redundancies in our process? What are some ideas?
I think the biggest thing is knowing who you're working with. So, like, and this has been like a fraud tactic for a long time, but like if you have an email address, maybe they have like an S missing, or an LLC, or a I, or an L instead of a, whatever. Like a lot of little tiny things in an email address, like you'll notice, like especially if you're working with like a large carrier, it's like, oh, I know, whatever carrier, and we're set up with them, we're good to go, and you don't really look at that, like the human error of it. Right. And so there's so many different companies out there now that have that user verification done, and you can build that into your TMS, that whenever you're sending a rate sheet, that little tiny step can really prevent a lot. And then on top of that, whenever you are about to dispatch or whatever, making that phone call after you send a rate sheet before you give out a pickup number, FMCSA number, like, hey, just verifying you got your pickup, you got the rate sheet, right? Okay, perfect. And then making sure that you've done a little bit of extra steps with the driver level on dispatching before giving out a pickup number. That pickup number hold dear and near to your heart before you just, give it out there.
Absolutely. Well, that's all the questions I do have. I do want to ask, what kind of impact, what is your goal? Obviously, Fraud Girls is taking off did you think that you would ever be doing this? And then, now that you're in it, what do you think what are you trying to get out of it, or what's your goal?
I did not think it would ever be like this. That's for sure. I really am thankful, I guess, for my roots on things. Like I dealt with copper and electrical wire. That was the biggest thing that I hauled whenever I was a rep. So my processes, like at my old company, they were very strict. And at the time I was like, oh my God, this is insane. But I learned so much from that. And so, it is crazy going from that to where I'm at now. And I guess long term, what I would love is to really see changes within, legislatively, and then also within the industry. Like, we all kind of need to educate each other. So as much noise as I can make as far as education, getting that out there, I think is huge. And then I work with TIA. They have a fraud task force. So I work with them about like legislative stuff too, because they're having some policies trying to get pushed through. And kind of just giving the authorities, like I said, the education piece on it. And not only that, but even if they do arrest somebody, like the California guys, they were telling me how they arrested somebody and they found a warehouse like all the way to the top, all the way to the back, full of stolen freight. It was like $13 million worth of stolen freight. That's just what was in the warehouse. Like, who knows how much they already had.
Right.
And they got convicted for 8 years. They served one, got out of good behavior. They came back out, and then they got a report about another theft happening. And they're like, that sounds just like, so-and-so. They look it up. The guy got out, and then turns out it was him again. So that little piece of it where like it's because it's considered property theft and not like even retail theft is stronger, time, I guess, than cargo theft is. So even that little piece legislatively we need to change, because otherwise they're just going to keep hitting us on that. We're not, and like the reward is so much higher than the risk. So that's the biggest changes, and whatever I can do to try to help that. And if that's talking to people, even people that are not in logistics, I think educating other people, because who knows, maybe somebody is best friends with Trump and they can make him do all these things. Like, who knows who. So yeah.
Have you reached out to any of our local legislators here?
I have done a little bit things not local, if I can talk. Not a ton, but that's kind of like my next step. That was my 2025 goal, is to do that. TIA has our policy forum. They just had it. I couldn't attend because it was my daughter's birthday, but they, that type of stuff, and then meeting up with people here. So that's definitely my goal going forward. It's on my vision board, actually.
That's your vision board. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we do appreciate you taking the time to come in and chat with us. We do have some gifts here for you to take back for coming in, and thanks for the education. I'm blown away by everything that I learned. I didn't realize. And you said something about Southern California, 75% of all cargo theft.
It's insane. Yeah.
Why is that?
The Long Beach port is the biggest port. I think that's the number one thing. And then not to dog on California, but California has their laws are a lot less too. Like I said, they're getting in, they're getting out. Their prisons are overran and whatever. So I think that's a big piece of it. And I guess I don't really know why, but it is definitely like California is number one spot. That Texas, Florida, Georgia, Illinois, New Jersey, kind of a lot of the main hubs, either rail hubs or port hubs, are like the biggest hot spots.
Awesome. Well, again, we do appreciate it.
Yeah.
And wish you luck with your vision board and make an impact you're making. So thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right.